The cardboard boxes were stacked neatly against the wall, each one labelled in Olivia's precise handwriting. 3 years of shared life reduced to containers and sticky notes. She ran her fingers along the edge of the coffee table, the one they had bought together at that little antique shop in Vermont. It would stay with the apartment. With him. Noah had texted that he was running late. Of course he was. Probably another emergency call from his mother. The thought made Olivia's jaw clench involuntarily. She checked her watch. 4:47 p.m. Her flight was at 8:30. This was cutting it close even for him. 3 weeks ago, Olivia had gotten the job offer that most journalists only dream about. Senior correspondent for an international news agency, based in London. When she told Noah over dinner that night, his first words weren't congratulations. They were, "But what about my mother?" Eleanor Wright was 58 years old, perfectly healthy apart from what Olivia secretly called convenient illnesses, and had managed to insert herself into every major decision of their relationship. The woman had even accompanied them on their anniversary weekend to Cape Cod last year, claiming her arthritis was acting up and she couldn't possibly be alone. The doorbell rang, startling Olivia from her thoughts. Noah wouldn't ring the bell to his own apartment. She opened the door to find Eleanor herself standing there, immaculately dressed as always. "I thought you might need help with your departure," Eleanor said, her eyes coolly surveying the boxes. "Noah's on his way," Olivia replied, stepping aside to let her in. "The movers already took most of my things." Eleanor nodded, moving around the apartment like she was appraising property. "It's probably for the best, dear. Noah was never really cut out for the international life. He belongs here, close to family." That was exactly the problem. In Eleanor's mind, family had never included Olivia. The memory of last week's conversation with Noah replayed in Olivia's mind. They'd been sitting on opposite ends of the couch, a physical manifestation of the distance that had been growing between them for months. "I can't just leave my mother live," he had said, his voice strained. "She needs me." "And what about what you need?" "What about what we need?" Olivia had asked, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. Noah had looked down at his hands. "I need to be here. This is where I belong." With her, Olivia had clarified. He hadn't denied it. The sound of keys in the door brought Olivia back to the present. Noah entered, looking tired and rumpled, his dark hair standing on end as if he'd been running his hands through it, a nervous habit he'd had since college. "Noah, darling," Eleanor cooed, immediately going to straighten his collar. "I thought I'd come help." Noah's eyes met Olivia's over his mother's shoulder. There was apology there, but also resignation. He'd made his choice long before Olivia had received her job offer. "The car service is downstairs," Olivia said quietly. Eleanor stepped back, clasping her hands together. "Well, I'll give you two a moment to say goodbye. I'll just wait in the hallway." She didn't go to the hallway. Instead, she moved to the kitchen, just out of sight, but certainly not out of earshot. Noah moved toward Olivia, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "I wish things could be different." Olivia felt a peculiar calm wash over her. "No, you don't," she replied. "If you did, they would be." For a moment something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps. The knowledge that she was right, that for all his talk of love and commitment, when the moment came to choose, he had chosen his mother. And part of him, maybe the part that had once dreamed of being a photographer in far-off places before Eleanor had convinced him to take that sensible job at her friend's insurance company, knew he was making a mistake. But that flicker died quickly, replaced by the same passive acceptance she'd grown to recognize over the years. "Your cab is waiting, dear," Eleanor called from the kitchen. Olivia picked up her last bag. "Goodbye, Noah." She didn't look back as the elevator doors closed behind her. The doorman helped her into the waiting car, and as they pulled away from the brownstone where she'd lived for the past 3 years, Olivia finally allowed herself to cry. But the tears weren't for Noah. Not really. They were for the woman she had been when she met him. 27, ambitious, and so certain she could handle anything, including a man with invisible strings attached. Their first date had been magic. Noah had taken her to a small jazz club downtown where they'd talked until closing time. He was thoughtful, asking questions about her work, as if her words mattered. When he showed her his photography portfolio, landscapes and street scenes that captured the hidden beauty of ordinary moments, Olivia had glimpsed the soul of an artist. It wasn't until their third date that Eleanor made her first appearance, calling 5 times during dinner about a plumbing emergency that turned out to be a dripping faucet. Noah had apologized profusely as he paid the check early, but his eyes had held a resignation that should have been Olivia's first warning. "She's just having a hard time adjusting since Dad died," he'd explained on the drive to his mother's house. "It's been 4 years, but some days are still tough for her." Olivia had been sympathetic then. She'd even brought Eleanor flowers the next time they met, seeking her approval. But Eleanor's smile never quite reached her eyes, and her compliments always carried subtle barbs. "Noah tells me you're very focused on your career. How modern." At the airport security checkpoint, Olivia wiped away the last of her tears. She thought about the ring she'd found in Noah's drawer 6 months ago, a beautiful vintage emerald that had made her heart race. She'd pretended not to see it, waiting for him to find the perfect moment. That moment never came. 2 weeks later, she'd overheard a phone conversation that explained everything. "I know you think she's the one, sweetheart," Eleanor had said, her voice carrying from the kitchen while Olivia stood frozen in the hallway. "But marriage is such a serious commitment, and with her career ambitions, where would that leave you? Leave us?" Noah's response had been too quiet to hear, but the ring stayed in the drawer. And when Olivia's job offer came through, a small vindictive part of her had been almost glad for the clean break it provided. London greeted her with typical British weather, grey skies, and a fine mist that seemed to seep into her bones. Her temporary corporate housing was sterile but comfortable, with views of the Thames that would have cost a fortune in a normal rental. Olivia placed her few personal items around the apartment: a framed photo of her parents, a small ceramic bird she'd bought in Mexico, her collection of first edition novels. Nothing that reminded her of Noah. Her phone pinged with a message. For a heart-stopping moment, she thought it might be him. Instead, it was from Jessica, her new colleague at the agency. "Welcome to London. Drinks tomorrow to celebrate your escape from America?" Olivia smiled. Perhaps escape was exactly the right word. The next morning, she arrived at the office early, eager to dive into work. The newsroom buzzed with the energy she had always loved, reporters shouting across desks, the constant background chatter of televisions tuned to different international channels, the smell of bad coffee and deadline pressure. Olivia Spencer. A tall man with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes approached her desk. "Marcus Williams, European Bureau Chief. Glad to have you on board." They shook hands and Marcus gave her a quick tour, introducing her to the team. Jessica, a whip-smart reporter with a South African accent and an infectious laugh. Daniel, the quiet data journalist whose analyses had broken several major political scandals. Priya, whose coverage of refugee crises had won her a Pulitzer the previous year. "We've got you starting on the Economic Impact series," Marcus explained as they returned to her desk. "With your background in financial reporting, you're perfectly positioned to tell this story." As Olivia settled in, she felt a sense of possibility unfurling within her. Here, she was valued for her mind, her talent, her drive. No one questioned her ambition or made her feel guilty for pursuing her dreams. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Noah. "Did you arrive safely?" Such a simple question, yet it carried the weight of everything left unsaid. Olivia's fingers hovered over the screen, 3,000 miles between them, and still she felt the tug of what might have been. She started typing a response, then stopped, deleted it, started again. Then she set the phone down and turned back to her computer. The story she was working on wouldn't write itself, and she had deadlines to meet. Noah's text could wait. For the first time in years, something else was more important. 16 months passed like a montage in a film, seasons changing outside Olivia's new flat in Notting Hill, bylines accumulating under her name, friendships deepening with her colleagues. She'd eventually replied to Noah's text with a simple, "Yes, all settled in. Hope you're well." Their exchanges grew increasingly infrequent until they stopped altogether. The promotion came faster than expected. After her series on economic inequality garnered international attention, Marcus offered her the position of Deputy Bureau Chief. The night of the announcement, the team took her out to celebrate at a pub by the river. "To Olivia, who crossed an ocean to show us how it's done," Jessica toasted, raising her glass. Later, as they walked along the Thames, Jessica linked arms with her. "Have you heard from the ex lately?" Olivia shook her head. "Not for about 6 months. Last I heard, he was still at the insurance company." She didn't mention that she occasionally checked his social media, not out of longing, but a kind of anthropological curiosity. His life seemed unchanged. Same job, same apartment, same orbit around his mother. "Well, good riddance to bad rubbish," Jessica declared with the fierce loyalty of friendship. "You've bloomed since you got here, you know. When you first arrived, there was something guarded about you." Olivia smiled, knowing it was true. She'd found herself in London, or rather rediscovered the woman she'd been before she started shrinking to accommodate Noah and Eleanor's expectations. The conference in New York wasn't her idea. Marcus had insisted she represent the Bureau at the annual Global Journalism Summit, calling it an excellent networking opportunity. Returning to the city that had once been home filled Olivia with a complicated mix of emotions, but she agreed. She was leaving the second day's keynote address when she saw him. Noah stood near the hotel bar, camera in hand, not the insurance company ID badge she'd expected. He was photographing the event, his movements fluid and confident as he framed each shot. He looked different somehow, his hair slightly longer, his posture straighter. More like the man she'd first met and less like Eleanor's dutiful son. Olivia considered slipping away unnoticed. Then Noah turned, and their eyes met across the crowded foyer. The moment stretched between them, a bridge of shared history and unspoken regrets. Then Noah lowered his camera and walked toward her. Olivia. Her name in his voice still held warmth, but without the desperate undertone she remembered. "I saw your name on the speakers list. Your talk yesterday was brilliant." "Thank you." She studied him, curious. "You're photographing the conference?" He nodded, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "I quit insurance about a year ago. Started my own photography business. It's going well. Mostly corporate events and conferences, but I've had a few gallery showings for my personal work." "That's wonderful, Noah. I'm happy for you." And surprisingly, she meant it. They moved to the bar, ordering drinks and finding a quiet corner. The conversation flowed more easily than Olivia had expected, untangled from the emotional barbed wire that had once surrounded them. "My mother wasn't pleased about the career change," Noah said, turning his glass between his hands. "Actually, she wasn't pleased about a lot of things after you left." Olivia raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "You were right, you know," he continued. "The day you left, when you said I didn't really wish things could be different. It took me a long time to admit that to myself. And now I'm in therapy." He laughed softly at her surprised expression. "Turns out there's a name for what my mother and I had going on. Emotional incest. Not the most pleasant term, but accurate." "What changed?" Olivia asked. "Remember my cousin Rachel's wedding? The one my mother claimed she couldn't attend because of her migraines?" Olivia nodded. Eleanor had insisted Noah stay home to care for her instead. "She did the same thing when my sister had her baby. That was the breaking point. I realized I'd lost you, and if I wasn't careful, I'd lose everyone else too." He paused. "I still live in the same building, but I moved to a different apartment, set some boundaries. It hasn't been easy." Their conversation lasted through dinner, not at all the awkward encounter Olivia had feared. As they walked out into the Manhattan evening, Noah stopped under the hotel awning. "I'm glad you didn't wait for me to figure things out," he said quietly. "You deserved better than what I could give you then." Olivia thought about the life she'd built in London, her work, her friends, the woman she'd become. "I'm glad too," she replied, surprised by the absence of bitterness in her voice. They didn't exchange promises to keep in touch or suggestions of future meetings. Some doors once closed should remain that way, but as they said goodbye with a brief hug, Olivia felt the last knot of resentment loosen in her chest. Back in her hotel room, she opened her laptop to finish an article due the next day. Her phone buzzed with a message from Jessica checking in from London. Outside her window, New York glittered like a constellation of possibilities, the city where she'd once believed her dreams would take shape, and where she'd learned that sometimes letting go is its own form of victory. Noah had chosen his mother over her, and Olivia had let him. In doing so, she'd chosen herself.
Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more interesting content coming soon.